Good morning. Welcome to Cornerstone Online. We're so happy to see you guys this morning. I hope you guys are doing well. I just wanted to share a couple thoughts I had this morning as we're going into about our 14th day of quarantine here. I know some people are going a little cabin crazy, at least here in our household, and we've still got about a month to go. And as I was thinking about that, I was reminded of Jesus in the wilderness. He was fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, and during that time it says in Mark that the angels ministered to him. And so I just want to challenge you guys, as you have this 40 days, 40 nights, plus minus a little bit, you guys have the opportunity to start fresh, to start new, to begin things that you didn't have before. And I just pray that during this time, it is a time of refreshing and a time of renewal.
Thanks, Lindsay. What's awesome about that is that's the season of Lent that she's referring to. It's the season we're in right now. Appreciate you sharing that. Hello, everyone. Good to see your guys' names on my screen. I'm sliding up so I can see a little bit better. Brock, Julia. Brock, I'm so bored. It's gonna get better. Hey, I heard somebody say this week, we're all in this together. And for whatever reason, that really resonated with me. Just this idea that we are. That's it, isn't it? Even though we're separate, we're in this thing that's never quite happened before in our lifetime, and we're in it together. So we've been connecting all kinds of different ways on Zoom with friends. My whole family connected on Google Hangouts this week. Email, phone, text, for both mine and Lindsay's vocations, all different sorts of ways of communication and connecting with people. I hope you guys are getting to do that as well, because, man, we are all in this together. In some ways, as I was thinking about what we're going through, this shared experience, it feels very non-discriminatory. Like almost everybody is being affected in some ways. You know, athletes, politicians, atheists, religious people, doctors, electricians, you name it, we're all in this together. I realize even as I say non-discriminatory, it's a very privileged thing to say, of course, because for me, sitting here in the comfort of my own home, with a job still, with resources, it is very different than somebody who is desperately looking for work, somebody who's trying to feed their family. Literally 7 minutes ago, somebody texted me, can't pay the rent, I'm going to be evicted, lives alone with their daughter, going to be evicted today if I can't come up with rent. So at the same time that I realize it's universally affecting all of us, it is affecting us in different ways. And that's just the way the world works. It is an opportunity for the church. Right now, we have an unprecedented opportunity to serve people, to care for people, to respond to these people that are asking for help, that even though we're all in this together, for whatever reason, they're experiencing it at a different level than some of us are. When we have a shared experience, if we let it can really be a connecting point for us. You know, as I talked to somebody yesterday who just had a couple freak out moments about germs and different things, there's something healthy and good and healing in the validation from somebody else saying, you know what, I've felt that. Hey Autumn, hey Heather, fun to see your guys' names pop up on the screen. So I just want to remind you guys, family and friends, validate what people are experiencing, listen. Sometimes as you walk through some of that fear and anxiety with people, instead of anxiety, it'll actually transform into a hope shared. While all of our experiences will be unique, all of our lives are being disrupted. No matter where you are in the world right now, different ways of disruption are taking place because it's something that's happening to everybody. So I want to get a little interactive with the people who have joined us today. Just share, if you would, who has been encouraging to you? Who have you gotten to share life with this week? Who have you connected with? Can you just, on your screens, just jot down, you know, is it a mom? Is it a dad? Is it a long-lost friend? Maybe somebody you haven't talked to in a long time. Let's just jump in a little bit and share with each other who have you connected with? You guys can just keep typing those things as you think of them. My mom got on the phone with every one of us this week and announced to us that she was driving to Florida to pick up her aunt. Her aunt's in her 80s, to move her aunt in to come live with them for a while. So of course, us kids, we could see each other's faces. We were on Google Hangouts. Us kids are like, wait a minute, you're crossing how many state lines right now? She did a speed trip down to Florida, came back with my aunt, all is well. But just the ability we have these days to connect is just so powerful and it's so unique. So I just want to encourage you, connect with people. Hey, thanks. I see that, Leanne. Friends. Brock says, my family's connected more through this than before. My brothers, my friends, my daughter. Awesome. Would you guys just keep it up? Just realize that we have a unique opportunity to connect in different ways than normal. And it's on us to do that. It's our responsibility to do that. So one friend of mine in particular, she's kind of a prophet to me in this whole situation, because months ago she said to me, Eli, don't you realize Easter is going to be canceled? You're probably not going to have Easter in the building. And I had my own thoughts. I'm pretty good at not letting every thought that happens here come out here. So I just kept this to myself. Her name's Sherry. Turns out she was absolutely right, and I never would have guessed it. Well, just yesterday I got an email from Amazon saying, hey, those communion cups you ordered, basically they said you weren't priority. We never shipped them out. Do you still want them? Joke's on you, Amazon, because I ordered single-serve communion cups weeks ago, because I am an advanced planner in some ways, thinking we've got to stop dipping in our communion. So I ordered these single-serve communion cups, and Amazon, just for whatever reason, they weren't a priority, wanted to know if I still wanted them. You know what, Amazon? We're not even meeting in the building anymore. So we don't need your fancy single-serve communion wafers with religious symbology stamped on the bread. Church, and I love this. I love the way I've seen people hashtag this throughout the week. Church has left the building. If you're like me, you're doing communion in your own homes these days. Oh, we're still doing communion here at the Shackle Lodge, and its name, dinner. Because dinner, for our family, dinner used to be once a week, mostly on the run, where once or twice a week we'd actually get to all sit down together. But dinner, right now, communion, is a family gathering every night. There's prayer, there's reflection, there's remembering, there's lamenting, there's laughter, and where we used to do it in all different ways, all of a sudden we're doing it the same way, because we're all in this together. Communion. At the Shacklefords, one night this week was chili from a friend, a guy named Dave Hahn. Homemade chili. It was really, really good. Another night it was green chili made by me that I crock-potted. There is a theme going on there, so if you have some leftover chili, just send that on over. Communion. I don't know if you understand this. Communion was never about the bread and the wine. It was about the shared bread and the shared wine. Communion was never about the contents. It was about the community. And I can't look at Brock's comments because I'll be laughing through the whole thing. Thank you guys. I see that you're still posting, checking in on people. I love that our church community is caring for people so well right now. Thank you. Thank you. We're all in this together, and we have an opportunity to reframe this whole thing. Just like Lindsay opened with, we have an opportunity to re-describe, to kind of really translate what we're in the middle of. Share in the comments, if you would, just a couple ways that you've had communion outside of the building. A few of your sacred moments, your holy connection. One of our communion opportunities, my wife called us up one night sometime this week, and she had crazy masks, and she played a video from the Muppets, and she made us all dance in front of the camera, and our first take was hilarious, and just so fun, just so engaging, and just communal. Well, the video didn't save, so we had to take it again. Still funny, just not quite as fun as that on-the-spot moment of connection and communion that we got to share together. Another one, my kids helped me build a woodshed this week. Communion. Till one of them chopped a hole in his foot. Then we had like actual blood instead of wine. The aftermath of that incident, my son said to the whole family, Dad just picked me up and had like dad super strength. He carried me up the stairs like a baby. Communion. I don't get to carry my 16-year-old very often. Communion. Riding in the car with him and just sharing some of those moments. How are you experiencing communion outside of the building? No priest, no rituals, no sacred ceremony, just sacred people and sacred spaces. I love it. Julia, I see that you had communion, a virtual birthday party for your dad. I love it. Awesome. We're in an odd place in our history where we're not having as much physical interaction, but I just want to keep encouraging people to continue to interact and to commune together. There's this moment from Richard Rohr's life that he has described. I've heard him describe it a couple times, so this isn't in his words. It's a great anecdote, though. He says, Richard Rohr, if you've never heard of him, go read one of his books. He's a Catholic priest. He's kind of laughing, and he says, you know what, people always want me to do something magic during the Eucharist. That's what he calls communion. So he says they want me to bless it and to bless them and to somehow invoke the magic of Jesus into this moment. And he says he's told them over and over, he says, you know, there's nothing magic here, right? There's nothing I actually do to change this bread or to change you. And he says every time that people say, I know, Father, but bless it anyway, just in case. I love that. And it actually takes me where I'm going today. I want to take you guys to the scene, one of the last scenes with Jesus from the Gospel of John. It takes place on a shore and in a boat. It's found in John 21, if you want to look that up. John 21, near the very end, man. And because John and Peter are friends, Peter stars in this story. He's one of the heroes of it. I'm just going to pick it up here in John 21. By the way, yes, I realize I'm telling a story about after Easter, before Easter, but we're all breaking the rules these days anyway, so I'm getting away with it. I'll go back to Palm Sunday next Sunday, and then Easter the following Easter. Hey, let me know too. I really thought about filming this in the building. If that would be more meaningful to some of you guys, just let me know if that's a better way to proceed, especially when we have a live band next Sunday. Putting Fred on the spot there. All right, here it is, John 21. Oh, the story's so good. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. So again, John's telling the story. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Canaan and Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. So I counted those up. That's 7 people of the original 12. They'd already lost one, so that's 7, 11. By the way, free Slurpees on 7-Eleven. So 7 of the 12 are in a boat, and Peter says, I'm going to fish. Literally, here it is in John's text. I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. So this is John's way of telling us, yo man, Peter was like donezo. He just looks at everybody and he goes, heck with this, isolation, I'm getting out of here. I'm going fishing. He couldn't stay cooped up any longer. He's with his best friends in a moment of just real disequilibrium. And he says, I'm going fishing. Anybody been there this week? I know my wife has. I think it was 2 days ago. She says, I'm going to IKEA. I let her get ready and then I said, honey, I don't think IKEA is open. And she said, why wouldn't IKEA be open? She looked it up and she found out it wasn't open. She said, I'm going to TJ Maxx. Because TJ Maxx is a real essential store during this time. I said, honey, I don't think TJ Maxx is going to be open. She looked it up and she said, well, I'm going out. So she got Landon, we had a little conversation. I said, do you think that's smart to take Landon just because of what's going on these days? She said, it's fine. We're just going to one store, going to Home Depot. Well, they got home, and I saw them unloading things down in the parking lot, out of the van. And when Lindsay wasn't around, I caught Landon, and I said, hey, man, where'd you guys go? He said, we went to Home Depot, and then Lowe's. and then Target, and then Smith's, and then Harmon's, and then the Dollar. No, I'm just kidding. They didn't go to that many. They went to half that number of stores. But she'd had it. She was done. Some of you, I've heard, you got in your car and you just drove. Like the one thing that you don't normally enjoy doing, you just got in your car and drove, or walked out of your door, just went on a walk. That's Peter. Peter's like, I'm out of here, man. I'm going fishing. He gets in the boat. And then John tells us this, we'll go with you. So that's all of his friends, all the other disciples. By the way, you know what kind of boat he got into. I'm thankful for Alex for this. These guys got a boat, they loaded it up, and that was a disciple ship. I find that funny. Nobody else seems to. Fishing's not that fun anyway, but here's how they describe their night. I'm kidding. Fishing's great. And they said, we'll go with you. So they went out, they got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. If you've ever been fishing and caught nothing, you know that's like the worst. That's the worst part of fishing, is that you don't catch anything, almost ever. The best part of fishing is the people you're with, the company. I think fishing is like the perfect shared experience for introverts who love being in the rain. Because I've always heard there's more fish in the rain, and to me, I've always just thought that's because like the people that like fishing like to be miserable with other people. Again, invite somebody into your misery, and you'll be following Peter here. As he gets in his boat, he says, I'm going fishing. His friends say, we're going with you. They were going to go have a miserable experience of not catching anything, but at least they were together. At least it was a shared experience. At least it was a time of communion for them as they were going to mourn. To mourn together, to imagine the first meal that they'd had together, some of the shared experiences they had, to be in loss together. And I just want to remind you again, share what you're going through with the people around you. Everybody sees me and talks to me and thinks I'm always positive and smiling. I have a hard time being down. It's just who I am. If I'm not the right person to share with, call somebody and share. Share this experience you're in. We're all in this together. Verse 4, John tells us, early in the morning. Oh, this is so good. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus. How many times has Jesus stood on the shore and the people within eyesight, within earshot, did not realize it was him? This reminds me of a passage, very well-known passage these days, in Matthew's Gospel. Jesus is telling some stories about some friends and some feeding and some clothing. And this is in Matthew 25. I'm sure you're familiar with it on some level. Jesus tells the story, or the way Matthew records the story, it's almost like it's a parable-y thing, and like they all knew it was a parable. But I've always wondered, I've always kind of suspected that when Jesus first started telling it, maybe his friends didn't know where he was going or what he was talking about. I can see it going something like this. Hey, Peter, remember when we first met? Peter thinks for a second. He's like, oh yeah, I was fishing. And Jesus said, yeah, you were. And Peter goes, yeah, you wanted to stand in my boat because you were preaching. And Jesus was like, yeah, I was. And then Peter says, and you wanted to go fishing. And Jesus was like, that's right. Peter says, I thought that was a stupid idea because I'd been fishing all night. But it turned out pretty good. And then I think as these conversations go on, I think at one point, at least this is how I kind of picture this conversation going, Jesus saying, hey, do you remember when I was hungry? And John saying, oh yeah, you were at a well. We went into town to buy you food. And Jesus says, no, not that time. The other times. And then, do you remember when I was naked? Do you remember when I was in prison? Do you remember when I was needy? And I can always just picture these guys sitting around in these moments going, who's going to tell them we don't remember that? And Jesus just drops this bomb on people. I love it. He just says, you've heard this. Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me. It's as if he's saying, we're not as isolated, we're not as disconnected, we're not as separated as we think. You want to be near me? You want to be with me? Go find a human that needs something, almost anything. And as you serve them, you're directly serving me. There's a direct correlation. It's one of the most powerful passages in the Bible. I want to read that line again. The one from John. I'm going back to John 21. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. And I just want to ask, have you had that experience? Have you had that experience? Maybe share that on your screens for a minute where Jesus has been close. Oh, so close. But you didn't realize it was him. Till maybe halfway through, or maybe till it was over, maybe days or years later. I've had so many moments like that in my life. He stood on the shore, but the disciples didn't realize that it was Jesus. And then it's going to get so good. Here it comes. Verse 5, he called out to them, friends, have you any fish? Hey, did you catch anything? If you're a fisherman and you haven't caught anything, when people ask you that question, it's terrible. Because you have to actually admit to them, nope. Just enjoying some misery out here by myself or with my besties. Hey friends, have you caught any fish? Did you catch anything? No, they answered. Verse 6, throw your net on the right side of the boat and you'll find some. That line, that must have been like a breath-catching, spine-tingling moment for these people because they'd heard those words before. You remember the whole story of when Jesus first met Peter. This is practically the same story that John's sharing. Hey, have you caught anything? No, we haven't. Throw your net on this side of the boat. I'm telling you, man, everybody in that boat must have just had the kind of hope that it's almost so big and so little that you don't want to share it. You just hold on to it. You ever had that kind of shared experience where you're in a space that's so profound and something happens that's either so jarring or so uplifting that every time you're in that space again, every time maybe you hear that set of words or that particular song, all the emotions, all the feelings, all the experience comes rushing back. That was this kind of space. Because Peter, no doubt, had told this story thousands of times. This was Peter's legend. And all of his friends had heard it, and they're all in the boat, and they hear it happening again right in front of them. And they must have all just been like, can this be happening? You know, remember that catch before we knew who he was? We were so tired. The last thing you wanted to do, Peter, is take the boat back out again. But you did it, and you caught so many fish that your nets were breaking. That was an extraordinary moment. It started with these exact words. Hey friends, hey, you guys out there, have you caught anything? Cast your net on this side of the boat. Try the right side of the boat. Throw your net on the right side of the boat and you will find some. And then John tells us when they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. And now this story that Peter had shared with his friends was being experienced as a shared moment between all of them. Became reality again. I love it. I love verse 7 is great. Then the disciple who Jesus loved, that's John, that's the author, the one writing the story. Hey, John, that's you. Yeah, that's me. He really, really loved, he loves everybody. You know, Jesus loves everybody. But he really, really loved me. John, that's you. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he'd taken it off, and he jumped into the water. I've always liked this moment in Peter's life because I don't think Peter tried to jump into the water. Okay, so Peter, he's all thinking what they're all thinking, and John verbalizes it, and John says, it's Jesus over there. That man on the shore is Jesus. And Peter grabs the first thing he can, he throws it over his shoulders, and he steps onto the water. Because come on, There was another time in Peter's life where the water took on a very unusual quality. Peter's a rock star in everybody's book, and rock stars don't swim in water, they walk on top of water. That's why Peter put his clothes on. You don't put your clothes on to swim in the water, you put your clothes on to walk on the water. Peter jumped on the water. Of course, he went into the water and came up, gasping for breath and saying, nope, I still have to swim. So Peter begins to swim to the shore, to this voice that had called to him. And then verse 8, John tells us, the other disciples followed in the boat, towing a net full of fish. For they were not far from shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish that you've just caught. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. Gotta love those details. But even with so many, the net was not torn. And Jesus said to them, I love this. Verse 12 is so good. So good. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. Breakfast is like the most ordinary thing about the day. I mean, it's like brushing your teeth. Come and have breakfast. But on that day, it became extraordinary. It became highly significant. It was written into their story. Man, hey guys, come and have breakfast. So the story so far, these guys are depressed. They go fishing. They fish all night, no catch. A stranger shows up. Friends, catch anything? No, we haven't. Cast over there. Perhaps you will. They catch of fish. Peter jumps onto the water, goes into the water, swims through the water. The disciples row as fast as they can. They all gather. Jesus already has a fire going, and he goes, let's have some breakfast. The anticipation is just building and building and building to breakfast. I don't know. I love that about Jesus and this whole experience. I actually wrote a poem about this. I don't write a whole lot of poems here and there. I do. I don't read them out loud very often, but since we're doing this, here we go. There was frustration, then there was fishing, which led to mourning. At least it was a shared grief with friends who knew. There was confusion, then there was hope in a human voice calling across the waters. Then the nets were filled in a sacred moment, a holy breath, the familiar pause of the improbable being born into the undeniable, shouting and splashing and rowing and running and dragging, tearing that bread and cooking that catch. What was once empty was now full and teeming with life. What was once breakfast had become communion. Thank you. That poem to me just kind of summarizes the power and the sacredness of this everyday moment. This common experience of breakfast, or chili from a friend, or hamburgers on the grill. What was once just normal and everyday all of a sudden became holy. I'm so tempted to read the rest of the story in John 21. I'm not going to, because I really want us to pause there for a minute. This is the beginning of this beautiful moment that we still follow today. This is the beginning of this tradition, this gathering of people that get together to celebrate the God who died as a human and came back to life so that we could have life, so we could have moments just like this. By the way, if you're not a believer and you have a hard time understanding why people are into this stuff, what all this means, John 21, that one chapter, is so rich and so powerful. If you read the whole thing, you'll see why people gave their lives to this guy, especially Peter's story. You'll see an unbelievable amount of forgiveness and hope and life and future. It's awesome. I'm not going to read it. I want to actually just go back a little bit. I want to ask 3 questions. that in some ways let them be three challenges to you too. They come right out of the passage. First one comes from John 21 verse 4. So this passage again, early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize it was Jesus. So church, friends, family, here's the question for each one of you today. Where is Jesus standing? Where is Jesus standing? And maybe we don't even realize it's him. Maybe we're not even aware. And if so, the answer is found in Matthew 25. Again, where's he standing? We usually know. We usually can identify where he is. So that's one. Where is Jesus standing? Where is he calling out to you? 2 comes from verse 5. He called out to them, friends, have you caught any fish? And I want to reframe that for you. The voice of God just saying, is what you're doing working? Friends, have you caught any fish? Is what you're doing working? Church, we have more answers than we think. We have more creativity than we think. We have more potential than we're even aware of. Is what we're doing working? Is the gospel being shared? Is communion being realized? Is it working? And then verse 12, Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. And I just want to ask you, how can you turn breakfast into communion? How can you turn the everyday into the extraordinary, the mundane into the holy? How can you have these sacred moments right now, throughout the day? You know, I mentioned I almost drove into church today. I was actually pretty set on it. A good friend of mine called and said, hey, I think it'd be really meaningful if you actually drove in and filmed from church. So I had planned on that. I had wrestled with that. For some reason, there was something in my spirit that I just didn't feel like today was the day to do that. And I asked my wife, very nonchalantly, right before I was going to leave, I said, all right, I can't make a decision. Tell me, should I go to church? This is so good. She said, we're at church. Why don't you film from there next time you're in there anyway? Next time you're at church, the church building, just live stream something from there. But then she said this. These are Lindsay's words. She said, our days don't matter anymore. It's all Sabbath. And then she walked out of the kitchen. And I sat there in the kitchen going, it's all Sabbath. It's all church. It's all Sabbath. It's all communion. It's all holy. That's what the life of Jesus was all about. It's what he'd been saying for his 3.5 years of ministry. It's all sacred. There's no more need for these special places to wash your hands, these special religious ceremonies, for sacred bread and special clothing, for sacrifices, for temples, for priests, for pastors, for offering. It's all holy. And we're all in this together. So church, family, friends, go grab some friends, go grab some family, online or in person, and celebrate communion today. The one thing you can't do with communion is take it on your own. The one thing you can't do with worship is do it really properly on your own. So find some people, find some community, take Sabbath, be the church. It's all Sabbath. Our days don't matter anymore. It's all Sabbath. Thanks, Lindsay, for ending our time with that. Friends, blessing, peace. I'm going to close this in prayer. Jesus, thank you for this community of people around us. Connected right now, but also connected in many, many other ways, watching and not watching. God, you are the God of the holy, and I just pray that we would understand and embrace this word, that communion can now happen anywhere. Sabbath can take place on any day, and hope can fill our nets, can fill our lives. God, when we tune our ears to your voice that's calling, when we open our eyes and look around for where you're acting, God, may we step into the fullness of joy with you, with each other. In your name, amen. Blessings, guys. I hope you have a great Sabbath. Amen.